This video is sponsored by Costway, who provided me with this elevated planter made of galvanized steel. Its solid construction makes it rust resistant, weather resistant, and it's suitable for indoor or outdoor planting. One thing I like most about this raised planter is the generous inner space, which is 24.5 inches by 12.5 inches. And it makes it perfect for my horizontal planters that I put my crawling plants in. This raised planter was easy to assemble and took me less than 5 minutes, and no tools were required. So I decided not to plant directly into the raised planter. And like I said, I put my horizontal pots that I have my crawling plants in, and I still had space for 2 other pots. So I love that I was able to combine all of these plants and make it aesthetically pleasing in minimal space. For more information on this Costway elevated planter, see the description box below, follow the link, and there's also a discount code. Thank you so much, Costway, for your sponsorship. Now let's get to the video. Hello and welcome to Peggy's Plants, coming to you from Central Florida. Today's topic is root-bound plants. Now, some plants do fairly well with their roots somewhat bound. However, this is an example of a plant that has extremely bound roots. And what happens in this situation is the roots begin to choke themselves off and the plant is unable to get the nutrition and the water that it needs. As a result, the condition of the plant begins to decline. And oftentimes you don't know exactly what is going on with the plant. Such was the case with my Calathea network. This plant had never given me a day's problem, but suddenly the edges of the leaves started yellowing. So I looked to see if it had any pest, couldn't find any problem with pests or anything like that. And then I decided to check the roots of the plant. I had the hardest time even just removing this plant from the pot, so it became apparent that it was root bound. As you can see here, it has definitely taken on the shape of the pot and the roots had begun to choke themselves off. So this plant definitely needed to be repotted. It had stopped growing and again, the leaf edges were becoming yellow. So I repotted the plants and after I would say about a month, the plant began to rebound and on the new growth, the edges of the leaves are not yellow. So had I not figured out what was going on with this plant, there's a good chance that I could have lost this plant. So that's one indication that your plant may be root bound. When you just can't figure out what is going on with the plant and you're starting to notice changes in the condition. Things were a little different with this plant, my Sansevieria sayuri. This is one of my favorite plants. And suddenly it just stopped growing. The new growth that was trying to come in was brown, and then it just did absolutely nothing. This is another plant, carefree. You know how snake plants are. They just do their own things, very little requirements. I noticed I was having to water it more frequently than I normally was, and I couldn't figure out why this plant wasn't growing. So I decided to pull the pot out and check things out. As soon as I saw the pot, I knew exactly what the issue was. You can kind of see here that this pot is not round, it's more of an oval shape. And when I'm squeezing on it, it's pretty hard. It's not like I'm hitting soil, it's like very firm. But can you see how it's misshapen, how the pot is misshapen? That's definitely telling me that this plant is probably extremely root bound, and snake plants have tubers or rhizomes, and that's probably what the hard part is that I'm feeling. So let me pull this plant out and see what we're working with. And here we have it. Now, it doesn't look nearly as root bound as the example I showed you earlier, but as you can see, these rhizomes are right up against the side of the pot and they had nowhere to grow. And that was what was causing the pot to be oval in shape. The roots are starting to grow around the soil in circles rather than going down. Another indication that this plant is root bound and could probably use repotting. When I suspect a plant of being root bound, I like to let it dry out completely so that I can remove the plant from the pot without the soil breaking up, if it is indeed root bound, like this one is. So the first thing I'm gonna do is check for pests. I made sure there were no pests on the plant as well as in the soil. I also sniffed the soil, yes, sniffed the soil to see if there's any kind of odor that should not be present. The soil and everything seems to check out with this plant, so I will be reusing it. And I will also be adding this soil that is a chunky soil mix that is well draining. It's heavy in perlite. And as you know, sansevierias or snake plants do not like to sit in water. So I'm just going to go ahead and backfill in the space around this plant. Now, a lot of people would break up the root ball. If that's what works for you, go ahead and do it. But this plant will have enough room and loose soil around the roots that the roots will find their way into the new soil. So I'm just not going to disturb the roots at all and will backfill around this plant. Okay, we have the plant all potted up. It's sturdy, it's staying in place, no problem. So it's well potted. And next important thing to do is going to be thoroughly water this plant. I normally bottom water plants, but because this one is newly repotted and I did let it dry out so hard, I'm going to really give this plant a good soaking. And I'm also going to use this opportunity to wash down the leaves and all of that to get any dust and debris off and like that. But I like to give it a nice good watering, let it soak in. And then once it looks like the water that I've just put in has thoroughly soaked through, I'm going to rewater it again. Like I said, when you have a plant that is this dry, a lot of time the water will run off the sides of the dry soil. So we want to make sure that I'm wetting it enough so that it's penetrating that soil. Sometimes when a plant has been root bound and you repot it, once it's repotted, it just takes off in growth. And this one did just that. This is how the plant looked, I would say about 3 weeks after I repotted it. And I started getting a lot of new growth. And I'm going to show you what the plant looks like today. But the leaves are upright. The plant overall is healthier. There's no brown new growth coming in. It's just doing a lot better. So now let me show you what it looks like after 2 months after being repotted. I'm really amazed at how well this plant has done after repotting. It has definitely hit a growth spurt. It's looking a lot better than it has been, and it is growing really quickly. These aren't the fastest growing plants, but this one is definitely growing a lot faster than it was. And it was just because the roots were becoming root bound. So if you see that your plants are declining, can't find any reason why they might be declining, you might want to take a look at that root, squeeze the pot, see if there's any evidence of your plant being root bound. And that's about it for the day. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you enjoyed this video and hope to see you next time. Take care, stay well, bye-bye.